Is your dog constantly suffering from ear infections, leaving you feeling frustrated and helpless despite trying what feels like everything? Watching your pet shake their head and scratch their ears in discomfort can be heartbreaking. But by the end of this video, you're going to discover my top natural remedies for ear infections that are effective, why conventional treatments often fall short, and how you can help your dog and your cat feel better naturally and quickly at a root cause level. Take it from our client, Lisa, and her dog, Sunshine. Sunshine was plagued with chronic ear infections, constantly shaking his head, scratching at his ears. Everything she used worked for a little bit, but the infections would always come back. Lisa was able to uncover the natural remedies that worked wonders for Sunshine, healing his ear infections and improving his overall health in just a few months to finally keep the ear infections from coming back. If you're dealing with similar issues, I'm Dr. Katie Woodley, a holistic veterinarian, and I help pet parents like you all over the world find the root cause of their pet's gut and skin health problems, like frustrating ear infections, and heal them naturally. And I don't want you to struggle alone anymore. There's a link below to speak with me directly, so go ahead and book a call. All right, let's dive into how I help your pet's frustrating ear problems go away for good. So why is this such an important topic? And skin issues, especially painful ear problems, are one of the number one reasons that pets go to the vet clinic every year. The skin's the largest organ in the bodies of our dogs and cats, and it's perpetually being exposed to a lot of different things, that internal factors, external factors. But here's the thing. When we can figure out why is that ear infection occurring, we can fix it and heal your pet for good. And I wanted to share one of my beautiful patients, Ella. Ella was having chronic recurring ear infections, scratching at her ears, creating sores. And because we were able to look at her from a kind of a step back, a bigger picture perspective, we were able to change her diet, provide natural herbs and remedies to help heal her body. And she was taking drugs like Apoquel when she came to me, and she even needed steroids. And currently today, she is off of all of those medications, not experiencing any of those symptoms because of the things we're going to talk about today. So some of the common signs of ear infections that you want to be watching for are going to be redness in that ear. So these ears that look like this picture, there's an odor a lot of times coming from that ear. When you lift up the ear flap and you smell it, your pet might be scratching and itching excessively at it. There's usually a lot of pain, which we're going to definitely touch on today and give you some natural remedies to really bring that down. They'll probably be shaking their head excessively because it's so irritating and painful. They may even have a head tilt, usually a head tilt towards the side of the ear that has the infection. And a lot of times you're going to notice a discharge that could be either black, it could be a reddish, like serous color, or it could even be like a pussy purulent discharge that's coming from the ear, depending on what type of infection that they have. Now, there's a number of causes of ear infections. And this is where if you're stuck in that vicious cycle of going back and forth to the vet clinic, you want to make sure that you are doing some of the diagnostic tests to figure out where that root imbalance is that's creating the symptom of the ear inflammation that's then leading to the ear infection. So environmental allergies, so sensitivities to pollens, grasses, dust mites can be causing this. Ear mites, so more common in cats or young animals that are just like rescued. They're not doing very well health-wise. These are the only ones that tend to be the highly contagious form of an ear infection. So keep that in mind. Not all ear infections are contagious, but if you're noticing all your pets are getting ear infections and it looks like a black waxy discharge, you might be dealing with ear mites. You definitely want to take them into the vet. We usually see secondary infections like yeast and bacteria. Those typically aren't the primary reason why it's happening. Endocrine disorders, so this is where we have hormonal imbalances, specifically hypothyroidism in dogs. There can be grass seeds that are stuck down there. So if you have a dog that loves running in the grasses in springtime, summertime, Unfortunately, those grass seeds can get stuck. They can be very irritating. The pet starts scratching, it gets red, and that moisture and the redness then create that secondary infection. So you always want to make sure your veterinarian is looking down that ear canal to make sure there's not a grass seed there that needs to be removed. Can also be triggered by food sensitivities or food allergies. These are very different conditions. Food sensitivities tend to be more common, and we're going to touch on that and one of the root imbalances that can then lead to ear infections. Polyps, which are like these fleshy growths that you can see in the ear canal, or if your vet's looking down the ear, they are more common in cats. They can create kind of a blockage of the ear flow or of the airflow in the ear, and that can lead to ear infections. And then, of course, trauma to the ear can create that inflammation, set them up for that secondary infection. So let's go through how to treat these ear infections, because these can be very serious problems. They can be chronic recurring problems, and they can create a lot of pain, which is so hard to watch our pets go through when they have an ear infection. So some of the diagnostic testing that you want to make sure is happening, and I listed it in order of kind of like working through if you are getting these recurring problems, so that way we can figure out what that root imbalance is. But a thorough veterinary examination. There's different types of ear infections, and a lot of times we're hoping it's on the external ear and it's not going into the middle ear. And two, you want your vet to also look to see, is the eardrum intact? Because if we're going to put anything down into that ear canal, we want to make sure it's not going to enter the inner ear and create an issue there. So, ruling out those grass seeds, the veterinarian should take their otoscope and do a good thorough examination. Also, they should be taking a sample of any of that exudate or discharge and looking under the microscope to see, is it a ear mite issue? Is it a yeast issue? Is it a bacteria issue? Is it a combination of all the above? So that's going to help identify what treatments you're going to use to help resolve those secondary infections and speed up the healing and help your pet feel better much faster than guessing and assuming it's an ear mite. I see that all the time. Ear mites are not the most common type of ear infection, but a lot of people will use over-the-counter remedies and it doesn't work. And it keeps them stuck in that cycle of inflammation and pain. So definitely have your veterinarian do some cytology on that. Then we want to do an elimination food trial. Food sensitivities can be a big player in this. And this is where we eliminate a lot of the proteins and we use a single novel protein your pet's never been exposed to. We make sure they're not getting other treats or the supplements don't have other flavorings in it. So that way we can see, how does our pet do? Does that inflammation subside after a few weeks of doing an elimination food trial? Now, if the ear infection keeps coming back, and I always say if it smells like a stinky sock, like a sweaty sock, that could be a Pseudomonas infection, which can be quite resistant to a lot of those topical antibiotics. So this is where doing a culture of that discharge that the vet would take the sample from, sending it off to the lab, making sure if they are using conventional medications, that it will help resolve that. So you're not just throwing all these antibiotics at your animal and affecting their microbiome and gut health, which we're definitely going to talk about. Also, too, to make sure that, especially with dogs, that there's not an underlying endocrinopathy or hormone imbalance. This is where doing some blood work and especially checking a thyroid, so the total T4, is really important. Now, there is also a saliva test that you as the pet parent can order from HemoPet that's called NutriScan. And it's a food sensitivity test to see, is my pet responding or reacting to certain types of foods, so you can remove them and make that elimination food trial much easier. If you go to a dermatologist, they might do the intradermal skin testing where they'll have to sedate or anesthetize your pet. And then they do the little pin pricks to see, does my animal respond to certain pollens, foods, grasses. So this is once again further down the list. We don't need to go there, but I wanted you to have this information. So that way, if you are stuck in a vicious cycle, you have these tools to ask your veterinarian about And then, of course, there's allergy blood tests. I recommend those for environmental allergens only because food allergies are very rare in our pets. Food sensitivities are more common. So these are all the things that you can talk to your veterinarian about. So that way you can figure out what those root causes are that are leading to that ear infection to occur in the first place. And I wanted to touch on some of the conventional treatments for ear infections. As a holistic vet, I am not against conventional medication when it's needed and when there's a quality of life issue. If there's a lot of pain, we need to reduce inflammation quickly. This is where a short course of steroids can reduce inflammation pretty quickly. But I'm going to give you some natural remedies that you can always use first, because obviously these drugs can come with side effects. A lot of veterinarians will recommend things like Apoquel or Cytopoint, especially if they're concerned there's a food sensitivity or if there's an environmental allergen. However, there are side effects that can come with these drugs because they are immunosuppressants. Topical therapy, so these are going to be the topical antibiotic drops that can work really well for the ear infection. I always go to those first before. You should never use oral antibiotics unless there's a severe inner ear infection, and that will be diagnosed with your veterinarian looking in the ear and also potentially doing those cultures and even potentially an MRI. So that's where we're getting to like the extreme end where we've had a chronic issue, usually for years. But these are all about suppressing the immune system, calming down that inflammation, reducing histamine, which creates a lot of the inflammation. And then also there's a lot of prescription diets that your veterinarian will, a lot of times put you on when it's a conventional vet, because that's what we're taught in vet school. And those prescription foods are essentially like your elimination diet that you can do with fresh food diets that I'm going to touch on too. So these are some of the side effects that can come with this because, they're immunosuppressing. So we're not just blocking, one thing, we're suppressing that whole immune system. So there's a lot of things listed here. I want you to be aware of those because it's important that we're not just giving a drug and we're asking better questions of our veterinarian. So then we can make an informed decision on whether or not we need to use this. There's also Apoquel side effects. I'm listing it here. This is directly off of the label. And a lot of pets are given these drugs. My own patient that I said at the beginning, this cat was on it. It's actually not labeled for kitty cats. And we're not supposed to be using it in dogs less than 12 months of age or with serious infections. And it hasn't been tested in animals where they're receiving those immunosuppressants. And I find a lot of patients come to me and they're on these immunosuppressive drugs and they're also being given Apoquel. So we need to ask, why are we using this? But two, you're going to have a great toolbox of natural remedies that you can use first. And then if you need to, you can always go to a conventional medication side. I always say, start with the natural, go that route first. And then if you need to use a little bit just to kind of lower dosages to help because of a quality of life issue, because of the pain, because they won't let you touch their ears, then this would be where the time and the place would be where you would use something like this. Now, I'm not a big fan of these prescription diets. They're very commonly used. So you're going to see hydrolyzed protein diets. You'll see brands that are listing it as a sensitive skin diet. You'll see novel protein diets. And most of these are going to come in your kibble diets, or they're going to come as a canned food. And I wanted to share a couple of the labels with you because it gives us an idea of why these diets don't work very well. So what you can see from this list of ingredients is there's not a whole lot of foods that are high in nutrients or phytonutrients. There's a lot of synthetic vitamins and minerals to make up for that. So when we think about the long-term effects for our pets, we're going to enter some nutritional deficiencies because synthetic vitamins and minerals are not as well absorbed in our pets' bodies. And this is another one: cornstarch, hydrolyzed poultry byproducts, aggregate, coconut oil, soybean oil, natural flavors, and then we go straight into all the synthetic vitamins and minerals. Obviously, if we were to eat this ourselves for every single meal for the rest of our lives, which is what is being recommended, we probably wouldn't feel very good and other symptoms could develop down the road. The other things, other problems with these prescription diets is that we have numerous studies now that have shown us that prescription foods being used in elimination trials also can contain ingredients of other animals, other fish that weren't listed on the label. Not very helpful when we're trying to do an elimination diet. There's also numerous studies that show decreased gut species of bacteria. So we have low diversity in that microbiome, which is where 70% of the immune system is. That's a problem. We've also seen increased inflammatory markers. So when we're measuring blood samples that dogs that are fed these dry food diets versus dogs fed raw, we don't want more inflammation. We're trying to decrease the amount of inflammation in our pets' bodies. And then also too, as that gut integrity breaks down, that gut lining, the immune system also is going to be affected because of that 70% residing right there. And it's going to be overstimulated, and there's a gut skin axis that's going to be affected. This is why a lot of times these ear problems are due to a gut health issue, but it's commonly being missed because we're not taught to look there in vet school. And so that's why you get stuck in the vicious cycle of going back and forth to the vet clinic for the same problem, because we didn't fix the root imbalance, which was actually in the gut. So what should you do? You're like, all right, Dr. Katie, my pet is experiencing pain, they have an ear infection. What can I do, right? I want to break it down into the 3 foundations that you want to be thinking about when you're healing your pet's ear infections. So first, we need to be looking at topical treatments. We need to be putting something on that inflamed hot ear to calm it down, provide some pain relief, while we're also treating those secondary infections, whether it's yeast, bacteria, or ear mites. We also need to be looking at the nutrition and supplements that are going into our pets' bodies to work on those same principles of reducing inflammation, supporting gut health, healing the skin, and helping them, right? And then the other factor too is environment. This is going to include things like the stress levels. We know that stress can directly impact gut health and create inflammation. We also want to be looking at like the toxins and being aware of what we're using in our environment, so we're not inadvertently increasing the level of inflammation in our pets' bodies. So step number 1, we want to clean the ears. We need to get the gunk out. Otherwise, we're going to be putting stuff on there. It's just going to be sitting on that wax, that exudate. It's not going to be contacting that skin and helping it to heal and reduce inflammation. So let's talk about some natural ear cleaners that you can make at home from some amazingly cheap natural remedies. So this is a recipe that I love using. My clients, super easy, works really, really well. And it includes 2 cups of brewed green tea. So get some organic green tea, the tea you would drink, brew a cup, cool it, remove the tea bag. That's your base. You're also going to get your organic apple cider vinegar with the mother. What that means is it's those floaty strands that's in there. One of the brands in the US is Bragg's, but you want to make sure it says with the mother on it. That's like the therapeutic components of that apple cider vinegar. So 2 tablespoons, then 5 drops of calendula tincture. Calendula is really good at healing the skin, reducing inflammation, and calming down those infections. So what we're doing is we're using something like green tea that has antihistamine properties, the apple cider vinegar that's going to help get rid of like that, break up that exudate, and then we're soothing and calming the skin. So you're going to just mix all those together in a glass bottle, and then you're going to put about 1 to 3 mils into your pet's vertical ear canal, massage the base of the ear, and you want to hear that liquid squishing. Do this with your dog outside, or if you have a cat that doesn't go outside, then I recommend not wearing nice clothes, putting a towel down, because they're going to shake their head after, and you want them to. And then we're going to wipe it out with a soft cloth or cotton balls, and you can store this mixture in the refrigerator for about 5 days. Before we continue, if you're feeling overwhelmed and unsure about how to implement these remedies, you're not alone. Our Healthy Holistic Pet for Life Blueprint program is designed to help pet parents like you uncover the root cause of your dog's or your cat's ear infections and create a personalized healing plan. Now, in this program, you're going to get lifetime access to expert guidance from myself, comprehensive training, and a supportive community. So click the link in the description to schedule a call with me to learn more. Now, let's get back to more natural remedies for your pet's ear infections. So this is a good kind of visual of how to clean the ears. So once again, you're putting that ear cleaner in. You're massaging the base of the ear to break up the exudate. So whether you're using a pre-made natural remedy that you've bought from your like holistic pet store or one from the vet clinic, same principles for both dogs and cats. And then next, what you're going to do is you're going to wipe out any exudate discharge with a soft cloth to start getting rid of that. So that way that the next step, when we put the natural remedy, the healing ointment in, it's going to contact the skin. And then also too, you can use a Q-tip if there's a lot of debris. This is where you can see those like little folds that are in the inner ear there in the flap. And you can take that Q-tip and wipe out the exudate. Now, big thing here, do not go into the ear canal with a Q-tip. So you don't want to see it disappear down the ear. Otherwise, you risk potentially hitting that eardrum, rupturing the eardrum. So you always want to just see the Q-tip if you're using a Q-tip. Now, next step, we've cleared away the exudate, the waxiness. Now we're going to use a topical treatment. So I'm going to give you a natural ear remedy infection recipe that you can use so we can start healing that ear while we're also supporting reducing inflammation and also has some topical analgesic, natural anti-inflammatory, will relieve pain also. So this recipe, once again, is very similar to what you just saw. This is where we can take 2 cups brewed green tea. We're adding a tablespoon of colloidal silver now. So that's for that antibacterial properties. We're going to add 5 drops of calendula tincture. Once again, soothing that skin, calming down inflammation. And we're going to add in 3 drops of Oregon grapefruit tincture. So we're really working on that yeast. We're really working on that bacteria because they're sitting there creating all this inflammation, which is leading to the pain. So once again, you're going to mix it all thoroughly together. You're going to clean the ears first. Remember, we're on step 2, and then you're going to put about 1 to 3 mils into your pet's vertical ear canal, massage that base of the ear. They can shake their head afterwards, but don't wipe out afterwards. So that's a difference. Just let it sit there, let it contact the skin. We don't want to wipe it out. Now, what if we have ear mites? So ear mites are gross little parasitic creatures that I'm not a big fan of, but can make your pets super uncomfortable. They are very, very itchy. Once again, they're more common in cats and they're also contagious. So if you've identified this in your cat, so going to the vet, and this is what we would see looking under the microscope, you definitely, if you have other pets, you need to look at their ears and see if there's this black kind of waxy exudate. You want to use an ear cleaner recipe first, and then we can use oils like olive, sesame, or coconut, which is actually going to help asphyxiate. So essentially, we're killing the mite. We're allowing them not to breathe the oxygen, which is one of the best ways, one of the best natural remedies we can use when we're treating ear mites. So there's a simple olive oil remedy. Clean the ears. You can even, if this is all you have, you can even use these oils to clean the ear, put a couple drops in, massage the base of the ear, and then remove as much of that debris, just like you saw in those videos, as possible. This is going to kill those mites. So you want to repeat this every 3 days for 2 weeks. With the other ear treatment recipe, you want to be using that twice a day for at least 7 days. You always want to be looking at the ear. Is it improving? Is it getting better? And if you want to improve the efficacy of the olive oil remedy, you can actually add 1 to 3 drops of calendula oil to 1 ounce of olive oil. So this once again reduces inflammation, heals that skin. So we can add in these other herbs, these Western herbs, for their therapeutic properties. Now, if your pet won't let you put anything in the ear, this can happen if they're really painful, if they have chronic ear infections and they're super sensitive to you touching their head. This is where we can create a healing mixture to apply to the outside of the ear 1 to 2 times a day. So we're not stressing them out. Go off of what your pet is showing you to reduce that inflammation and also to help with the pain. So this is where we're going to use a carrier oil. So something like coconut oil, your jojoba oil, sesame oil. We want a carrier oil to dilute essential oils. So this is where essential oils, when they're used appropriately and we're using the right brands, they can be very helpful for both dogs and cats. So lavender has antibacterial properties. It's calming. Myrrh is very helpful at reducing inflammation alongside frankincense essential oil, which is also very grounding, and copaiba. So copaiba essential oil is a great anti-inflammatory oil. It helps also with pain. Now, keep in mind, this is on the outside of the ear. It's not going into the ear canal. We don't want to put essential oils down into the ear, and we want to be using pure therapeutic brands that are testing, that are not adulterated. A lot of lavender essential oil, it's the most adulterated essential oil, and there's a lot of controversy around this. If this makes you super nervous, you could always use a hydrosol, which is a more dilute form. It won't be as concentrated, so you might have to use it more frequently than you would this type of mixture. But it can work really well at bringing down that pain and that inflammation, so then your pet will allow you to actually put things into the ear and clean it and get rid of that debris and exudate, because that can sometimes be the biggest battle you come up against. Now, what are some of the other natural remedies where we can reduce inflammation and pain naturally? And there's some topicals, but a lot of times there's things that we can put, either using it in the food or giving it as a supplement, that will also help alongside your topical treatments and remedies we just talked about. So I love teas. They're super easy to use. Most pet parents across the globe can access organic herbal teas. Now, I put chamomile tea here because we can use it for anxiety. We can use it for stress. It also helps support gut health, and it calms down inflamed skin. So when I'm talking about these teas, for one, we can use it topically. You'll see green teas on here, and it's in some of those recipes. But we can also put it into our dog and our cat's food. And that way they're ingesting it, it's going to work systemically, and it's going to help complement your topical remedies. So if you have a pet that has really hot and inflamed ears, peppermint's really good for its cooling properties. Once again, you could brew a cup and you could put a little bit on the outside of the ear too, to help bring down that heat that's present. And green tea, one of the amazing properties about it is that it is a better antihistamine than a lot of the conventional over-the-counter antihistamine drugs. So this is where I use the decaffeinated version, and you're going to add, for any of these, about a quarter of the brewed tea. So cool it, remove the tea bag, add it to the food for a small dog or a cat, half a cup for a medium-sized dog, and 3/4 cup to 1 cup. You can divide that amount too, mix it in with the food for your larger dog. Once again, you can use them topically too if you want to. We also want to be making sure that our dogs and our cats are getting omega-3 fatty acids into their diet. So this is going to help disrupt the production of those inflammatory chemicals that are occurring with this inflamed immune system, this aggravated immune system that's leading to that inflammation. And we can also, when we use this, if your dog or your cat is on conventional medications like steroids, it can reduce the dosage that's needed. And that can also bring down the risk of those side effects and complicating factors that scares a lot of us, right, when we're using conventional meds. The downside with these sometimes is that it can take a bit of time for us to see the results. So this is where making sure your pets are on some source of omega-3 fatty acids, whether it's a supplement form or whether it's whole food form, like adding in salmon as like a superfood topper a couple times a week. If we're using, sardines, those are great for both dogs and cats. Minnows, so using your fish-based omega-3s are a great way. And a lot of cats who can be quite picky, right, will also eat those too as treats. So definitely look at the concentration of EPA and DHA on the bottle. If you're using a supplement, we want both. And there's a dosage listed there that you can roughly follow. Now, if your pet's sensitive to your fish forms of omega-3s, you could always use something like an algae oil. So we're still getting those good omega-3 fatty acids. One of the other natural remedies we can use too to help bring down inflammation, this is a very powerful analgesic, is CBD. And so this is your non-psychoactive component of the cannabis plant. So it's not going to make your pets high, but it works really well for inflammation, reducing pain. It prevents mast cell degranulation. So those mast cells are the things that are producing that histamine that are overactive when we have allergies, ear infections. So calming that down this is a great product that you can use. It also, if your pet's really stressed and we're worried about that other element and that foundation, this will help rebalance them too. I recommend looking into the full spectrum tinctures. There's also salves that you can apply topically. So if you find brands that you know, like, and trust that are creating these products, you could also use those alongside some of the remedies that I listed before. And the big thing here is you just want to do your research, make sure the company is using organic sources. We don't want to be putting more chemicals in, and CBD is really good at grabbing your glyphosate, your heavy metals from the ground and absorbing it, and that the companies are testing the product too. So looking for your certificate of analysis is really important when you're analyzing a CBD company. And then nature's Benadryl. So quercetin is really helpful when we're worried about an allergic component or sensitivity with an ear infection, which is very common. So quercetin is very safe too for both dogs and cats. So it's a bioflavonoid that has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties. So it's going to reduce inflammation. It's also a natural antihistamine. So just like CBD, it's blocking those mast cells. We can typically find it in like leafy greens, apples, tomatoes, berries, broccoli, onions. Don't recommend onions. That's not a safe food for your pets. But I tend to use the supplement form because it's more concentrated. So it makes it easier to get the effective dosages into your pets. A lot of times it's coupled with bromelain, which is an anti-inflammatory enzyme found in pineapple. So that 10 milligram per 10 pounds per day divided into 2 to 3 doses is a great starting place. And then nettle. So stinging nettles, if you've ever come across that in gardening, it creates like prickles on you, right? But we can actually use this to help with some of that allergic components and helping to support a healthy immune system where we're modulating it, once again, working on that histamine release from those mast cells. It also has anti-inflammatory properties. It's what we call a tonic herb, where it's very rich in phytonutrients, so it's supporting whole body health. Some animals might get a little bit itchy on this, like at first. So if you're noticing that, I always recommend starting one supplement at a time so you can get an idea of what's working and what may not be working for your pets. But if you see that, just reduce the dosage and then slowly increase it to that dosage that is the effective dosage for them. You can use a dried herb, so half a teaspoon to each cup of food at mealtime. You can also use tinctures, and there's a lot of great pet brands out there that you can use that you would just follow the dosing on the label. And then we have herb gardens, which I absolutely love, especially for our cats. So we're following the principles of self-selection. So this is where we're allowing our cats to choose what they need to heal. So they have this instinctive drive to like really seek out the herbs that is going to allow their body to heal. So when we think about this in nature, this is like your cat's eating grass, right? They're careful. They're like picking certain blades if you watch them. So all you do, you can see Moki here, who's my own kitty. It's my cerebellar hypoplasia cat, so he's a bit kind of wonky. He's self-selecting rosebuds. Super easy here. Just put down a towel in a quiet area and put down a teaspoon or so of a dried organic herb and into each corner. I usually, if I have a big towel, I'll put down like 6 different herbs and just watch what they choose and what they self-select. It's pretty amazing and fascinating to watch. And if we're looking for specific herbs for inflammation and pain, then we would be picking things like calendula. We'd be looking for chamomile. We'd be looking for helichrysum, which is a great anti-inflammatory, and rose. So we're treating essentially all the systems. If there's stress component, anxiety, gut health, we're helping with inflammation naturally. And we're getting those synergistic properties of the plants rather than relying on a conventional drug that's only working on a single pathway in the body. So this is just one of the many reasons why herbs are so powerful at healing the body versus just treating symptoms. And then, of course, we've got these great remedies we can use to help heal, reduce inflammation, get rid of the pain, but we also want to keep it from coming back, right? Who here wants to never have to go to the vet for another ear infection? I'm pretty sure if you're dealing with that symptom, that condition, you probably have your hand raised. So the step 4 is how to prevent ear infections, this proactive healing approach. And this is where we need to talk about your pet's microbiome. This is that complex microorganisms inside, outside of your pet. The microbiome is made up of trillions of different types of bacteria, protozoa, fungi that live everywhere essentially, but that gut and especially the large intestine is going to make up the largest amount of those microorganisms. Now, this is why it's so important. The microbiome affects everything. It is all interrelated. So it's connected to the skin, it's connected to the brain, it's connected to other organ systems. And here's the thing, 70%, at least 70% of the immune system's there. So if that gut's not working well, we get an inflamed gut lining, we're going to have an issue with the immune system. And then if that immune system's in overdrive, that leads to more inflammation in the body, which then goes through the bloodstream, can activate the local immune system at the skin level. And then we see hot spots, itchiness, ear infections. So we need to be aware of what we're feeding our pets, those vitamins and minerals, that gut, brain, skin access. So even looking at stress levels, because stress can create inflammation in the gut. And it's also protecting against invading pathogens. If there's toxins they're coming into contact with, to also the natural processes that are occurring, it should be removing toxins versus them getting stored or recirculated. So when we have an issue with that microbiome, when the microbiome health is not optimal, we get what we call dysbiosis. This is where we have an overgrowth of good versus bad bacteria. And then we end up with what we call leaky gut. Leaky gut is where we get this single cell lining of our gut cells that becomes inflamed. They should be held together nice and tight with those tight junctions. There should be no passing of toxins, food, bacteria into the bloodstream. But when we get inflamed, things can pass through, hence the leaky gut. And the problems are like food can be an issue, toxins like glyphosate, parasites can create a problem. So processed foods also, because of the chemicals that are produced when they're cooked at high heat temperatures, so things like kibble, and then antibiotics, other drugs can also create this bacterial imbalance. This is why food matters. If you're dealing with a chronic ear problem, food matters. So what we want to do is we want to take a good and long, hard look at the foods that we're feeding our dogs and cats and transition them off of the current food if they're being fed a dry processed diet onto a food that they've ideally never eaten before for 3 months. We want to look at species appropriate diets. What this means is it's going to be less processed. So things like freeze dried, your raw, your lightly cooked. Those are going to be less processed, and also looking at different proteins. So proteins they've never come into contact with. So we want to be looking at all the ingredients in the food and treats being fed, but also look at your supplement labels too, because a lot of supplements will have different flavorings added like chicken, pork, beef that could upset everything if you're trying to do an elimination diet. For your dogs, what you want to do, you can do this, is you can always do a home cooked diet with a novel protein they've never been exposed to. That's what that means, a new protein. So goat, rabbit, kangaroo are just a few examples. I love rabbit because it's cooling energetically, and then picking a neutral vegetable your dog hasn't consumed before. So like steamed spaghetti squash, your butternut squash, jicama, zucchini are great examples that aren't also providing a lot of starches, which can feed the yeast if they have a secondary yeast overgrowth. And this is not a balanced diet for long term, but it's to show us, is my pet going to improve with a limited ingredient diet and reduce inflammation, allow that gut to heal, allow that skin to heal, because we're calming down that inflammation. For your cats, you want to transition them off kibble if you're currently feeding that, and use a limited ingredient like raw food, freeze-dried, or lightly cooked diet. There's a lot of great brands out there that are pre-made, so you don't have to like balance. Cats are definitely, we want to make sure that they're balanced. They're very sensitive to taurine deficiencies and other deficiencies, but most cats like rabbit. Once again, it's cooling energetically, so we can tap into food therapy and calm that down. So feeding a species appropriate diet is key here. So with ear infections, we're looking at those cooling foods. What can we use? How can we use food as medicine following different food therapy principles? A lot of pets are on chicken, or chicken's in a lot of these over-the-counter diets, and chicken is very warming, and it's a very common food sensitivity along with beef and fish. So we want to look at, okay, cooling proteins. That's going to be things like turkey, duck, rabbit. Cooling vegetables. Those are vegetables that are typically high moisture content. They're above the ground. They're not root vegetables. We want to avoid root vegetables right now because of the starches. Once again, starch turns into sugar. Yeast loves sugar, so we don't want to feed them. We want to starve the yeast while we're bringing down inflammation. And a big thing to remember is not every pet will be fixed with a diet change. It doesn't mean you shouldn't feed a less processed diet. You still should, but there's different levels of types of immune dysregulation that can be occurring. So all these supplements, the different topical remedies, and the foods are still really, really important. But essentially, the goal is to fix this underlying immune dysregulation so chronic inflammation can be resolved. We want to make sure we're looking at these other factors in the body, what's going on with the microbiome, the immune health, the stress levels. And another big area is the environment. So unfortunately, we live in a toxic world. But here's the thing, when we know, we can do better. So when we become aware of where potential toxins could be coming in that are increasing the level of inflammation in our dog and cat's bodies, we can help reduce them. We can't control everything, but there's a lot you can do in your internal environment to help reduce those toxins. So looking at like outdoor toxins, maybe we need to use natural herbicides, or, a lot of people are using glyphosate and Roundup on their yards. But if we know they're doing that, we can support detox pathways, which we're going to talk about. The water source, are we using filtered water? Water is like this silent toxin collector. There's tons of toxins in there. You can go to the Environmental Working Group website if you're in the States, and you can type in your zip code and actually see how many toxins and potential carcinogens, so things that cause cancer, that are lurking in your water supply. So an easy solution, filter the water. We use, the filter sits on top of the counter. It wasn't super expensive. There's a lot of great options out there. And the Environmental Working Group website, they have an entire section on different water filters that you can take a look at. We also want to be looking at indoor toxins. So things like cleaning products, your beauty products. What are you putting on yourself that, if you have a cat that sits behind you on the couch and is licking your hair, or they're licking your leg, they're licking off those lotions, they're potentially licking off the creams, the shampoos, the things that we're putting on our bodies. So one of the things that I found is that when we become aware of that and how it's impacting our pets potentially, we actually become healthier too, which is great. We also need to be thinking about the immune health. So this comes down to vaccines, making sure we're doing titer tests. So we're not just vaccinating every single year. We're making sure that our pets actually need those vaccines. So we're not over vaccinating them and creating what we call vaccinosis, or overstimulating the immune system. And we need to be looking at the preventative flea, tick, and heartworm medications that we're using, because a lot of the flea and tick products, especially the isosazolazine family, so those are Bravecto, NexGard, Credelio, Simparica, I'm probably forgetting one or two. That brand is a neurotoxin. We do not want to use it. We want to look at natural remedies instead. These are natural repellents, and they don't work as well, right? Because they're not killing the insects, but they're also not killing your pets, which can happen with some of these other chemicals that are out there that are commonly being prescribed by veterinarians. And also look at the stress levels. Are there things we can do to create a more environmentally enriched area for your cats, especially? Are we engaging with them? Are we getting them to play and move? Are we creating safe zones for them? And then our dogs, are we playing with them? Are we that physical health? Are we exercising them? Very, 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 very important and easily forgotten about. So make sure you're assessing stress levels. And it doesn't mean you have to have a massive overhaul, but these are things that I want you to become aware of, so that way we can improve them and prevent these ear infections from coming back next time. And 2, support those detox pathways. The liver's in overdrive due to the excess histamine that's being produced, and especially if you're having to give conventional medications to help with those symptoms. So we want to use blood cleansers, or these herbs that are going to help with those detox pathways. We need those detox pathways open. So using things like milk thistle, burdock root, cleavers, dandelion greens that we can add to the food. A lot of times these are combined in a lot of herbal formulas with pet brands due to their beneficial, their complementary, and their synergistic properties. Licorice is really helpful too because it's working on the adrenal glands. So we're calming down the stress. We're also calming down the excess cortisol, stress hormones that are being produced. And it has steroid-like properties without all the side effects. So it has natural anti-inflammatory properties. So once again, the combination of all of these things, it's not just one or the other. You don't have to use all of them, but what I like is finding brands that do combine them, or starting with one, seeing how your pet responds, watch the inflammation, journal about it so you know what's working. Don't add too many things all at once. That is the key to healing your pet's body and being aware of these different factors. So this is the roadmap to follow. Changing that diet to a less processed food, maybe doing an elimination diet using a cooling protein, making sure we're getting diagnostic tests done, especially if we have recurring ear infections that aren't going away. There's something that's causing it. We have to find what that root imbalance is. Making sure we're using these natural topical treatments, the ear cleaner, then using the remedies that are a bit stronger to help take away those secondary infections, using natural remedies and foods to help support detox pathways, provide natural anti-inflammatory, the analgesic properties, and supporting skin health to allow it to heal. Looking at the environment, looking for those toxins, reducing the toxic burden in your household externally, and supporting your dogs and cats. And of course, I always say partner with an integrative veterinarian that has knowledge in these areas and also the conventional side. So that way you can get relief faster, but also heal that root imbalance much faster. So natural remedies are very helpful when we're treating ear pain. Once again, to reiterate from the very beginning, I'm not against conventional medications. There are a time and a place. I do recommend working with your veterinarian, getting an examination done, make sure they're looking in the ear. So we're checking to make sure that ear canal's okay, that eardrum's intact. Those are very important things when we are treating ear infections for both dogs and cats. But there's a lot of great remedies that we can use. There's a lot of great proactive approaches we can take to heal the body versus having a reactive approach and having to go back and forth for conventional drugs for the same problem, watching your pets be in pain. So I hope you found this really helpful and gave you some more tools to have in your toolbox. If this is something you're struggling with and you're ready to find a way forward, rather than hoping the next thing works, there's a link below to speak with me directly so we can start figuring out together how to heal the root cause of your pet's ear infections naturally. And if you'd like to continue to learn more about allergies and how to use natural remedies, make sure to watch our next video here.